Good morning, everyone. We're waiting still a few minutes until everybody who subscribed can join the webinar. Okay, there are 40 participants at the moment, so I guess most of you who subscribed are already here. The ones who come in later can still join, of course, so we can start off because we have a tight schedule this morning. Welcome everybody at the first webinar about data integration. My name is Yasmin Jacques. I work for Mpact, and I would like to welcome you all very much. Let's see for the next slide if it works. Yes, so this is our first webinar about data integration for Ehubs, the first because next Monday there will be a second webinar. Next Monday, the 13th of December at 14 p.m. The content of the webinar is exactly the same, only the language is different. So the webinar will take place in French. If you have any French-speaking colleagues of partners, you can still invite them to join the webinar. Subscribing is still possible. You can see all the information on the website of Mpact or the website of Ehubs, the project itself. The goal of this webinar is to explain in a very, very easy, understandable way 2 data standards that were endorsed by the Ehubs project. Some small agreements we have to make, so please turn off your microphone. Most of you do automatically, of course. We friendly ask you to turn on your camera. It's much nicer if we can see people's faces and know we're talking to people and not a black screen. So very welcome to turn on your camera. This webinar is also being recorded. You can still watch the webinar afterwards again if you would like. And questions you can put in the chats. Use the chats. I see some people already told where they come from, so please use the chat. Questions during the sessions can also be put in the chat and will be handled at the end of the webinar. Now, first, a little explanation about Mpact. Who is Mpact? Well, Mpact was formerly known as Taxi Stop. About half a year ago, we changed our name, but we didn't change our mission. We still have the same mission, do more with less, since the very start, since 1975. And we do that by focusing on more efficient mobility through 3 pillars. The first pillar is solutions. We create really concrete solutions and launch our own very own services, such as Carpool, such as Mobi Calendar or Cozy Wheels, or a service for disabled people. So really for all people, for people all over Belgium, as well in Flanders, as Wallonia, as Brussels, and very inclusive. The second pillar is innovation. We dream out loud and we dare to try new things. We look for partners because we really want to work through cooperation and increase the impact of developing new solutions. And finally, awareness. We do that by increasing political and public awareness, by organizing events like Shared Mobility Rocks, the one you see on the picture, or creating necessary policy framework to boost shared mobility. Now, that's a little introduction about who we are. But my next question is, who are you? I'm going to launch a little poll, and you can indicate for what kind of organization you work. Normally, now you can see the poll and you can click on the bottom of what kind of organization you work. You can choose between local government or another government, a research institution, shared mobility provider, a consultant, or some other organization. Okay, that's very fluent. Let's wait some more seconds. Okay. I'm gonna end the poll now and share the results. It's very nice always for us to know who we're talking to. So you can see 38% is local government. That's the biggest part of this group. Also a lot of shared mobility providers. So we're very happy to welcome you and guide you through data integration. Okay, delete the poll. Let's talk about today's program. First off, Gemma Schepers from the city of Amsterdam is going to talk about the Cdsm standard. Next up, Challe Groen, he's an interoperability expert by Mpact, my colleague. We'll talk about the TOMP-API, and the last, yeah, the dia presentation doesn't work. Yes, and the last 10 minutes of this webinar, we will have a Q&A. So all the questions you put in the chat during the sessions will be talked about the last 10 minutes together with Gemma and Challe. At 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime, so we will round up our webinar at 12 o'clock and we will wave you goodbye. Now, a very short introduction about the Ehubs project, because this webinar is organized in the context of the Ehubs project. The project is funded by the Interreg Northwest Europe program with as lead partner the city of Amsterdam. In the project, we work on shared electric mobility at hubs. We want to make clear that shared and electric mobility can really be an affordable and an attractive alternative to your own car. So we work on that modal shift, on less car use and on CO2 emission, less CO2 emission. That's the aim we're working on within the project. But what is an Ehub? What are Ehubs? The E, it's pretty clear, it stands for electric vehicles. And a hub, as you can see on the picture, is a physical place somewhere in the public space where shared and electric mobility together with other services are clustered. The hubs are always tailored to the local conditions, local users, inhabitants, and needs, and hubs can be linked in a network. Of course, to link the hubs in a network, there's a large digital site to make it work, and also to provide the electric shared mobility at the hubs. And that's where Gemma and Challe come in. So I'm very happy to give the floor to Gemma for the first presentation about the Cdsm. Gemma, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jasmine, and thank you for inviting me for giving a presentation about the Cdsm. I see a few famous faces, so a few of you already probably heard of the Cdsm. I wanted to start the presentation on a very easy level to just explain to everyone why actually we use Cdsm and what it is and what it actually contains and how far we are in the project. And I think before we start, I actually want to show you all a movie, and I hope this movie will give you more insights and a bit of better understanding, and then I will give my presentation. So I'm going to share my screen and start the movie, and I hope that it will work.
We don't have any sound, Gemma. I think it's the same for everyone.
You don't have sound?
No, we don't.
Okay. Then can I share my screen with the sound? And do I need to do something to give a sound on the screen or on the?
When
yes,
we tested,
Gemma, sorry, Gemma, there is a little option at the bottom when you go to choose your screen that says share sound. There's a tick box in the bottom left-hand corner.
Hey, Roos. Yeah. Okay, I try it again, guys.
yes.
Ross, do you have the movie then there or not? Okay, we'll try it again to share it.
I'm afraid I'm stood in the middle of the supermarket, so I have no ability to share anything.
You don't have any ability to share it. Well, you know what? We're going to do it without the sound because it's we have a title on. We have it undertitled, so I think that will work also. Share sound. Okay, let's try it again.
As the local government, we want to have a better understanding of how public space is used for mobility. To do so, we work together with citizens, commercial parties and other governmental organisations. Speaking the same language is essential for it to work. Also, when talking about data. For this reason, we are creating a uniform data standard for mobility, Cdsm. This is an API that offers a safe and efficient way for various mobility providers to share their data with the government and vice versa. For example, the number of users, journey lengths and movements through the city. The data is real-time and enables you to manage mobility in a dynamic way. This way, you will immediately see the results of policy decisions and you can learn from them. And you can communicate directly with the systems of the mobility providers and as a result, work together more efficiently. Mobility does not end at the city borders, so data must be exchanged in a uniform way. In this way, mobility providers can easily expand to other municipalities, and municipalities can learn from each other by comparing datasets. In the Netherlands and beyond, Cdsm was designed according to European standards and laws, so it can be used in all of Europe. With Cdsm, we are building a foundation for mobility to contribute to an accessible, livable and clean public space. We need your organisation to join in. Will you help to make Cdsm the data standard for mobility in Europe?
Well, I hope everyone could hear the yeah.
Yes, the sound was perfect now.
Good. Okay, well, that was a short introduction in the Cdsm, and well, actually, what we are doing, there are a lot of different standards in the market at this moment to share data from mobility transport operators towards cities. So what we want to do is we want to learn more about how shared mobility actually is used by citizens in the city, how many, how much, where they park, and all kinds of policy questions you can have from it. And you want to have data. And we see that a lot of transport operators actually act in a lot of different countries in Europe, not only in the Netherlands or in Belgium or in France or in Spain, but actually they offer their services in different cities through Europe. And what we're trying to do is every city wants to learn on how actually the shared mobility is working and asking data. And what we want to provide is a data standard in a uniform way in which all cities can collect data in the same way. So it will have benefits for cities. They can also compare data with other cities, but also for transport operators, they don't have to have in every city a different format to exchange data. That's actually what we want to do. And well, we're working on this project already for, I think, almost 2 years. Ross, who's also joining this presentation, is the visionary technical person in our team. And I think through the 1.5 year, 2 years that we're actually developing these standards, we did a lot of learnings on as well the technical side, but also on how it works for governments, what you should do to implement a standard, and how you can exchange data on also the privacy levels, security levels, and all the policy questions that you have, and how the ecosystem between transport operators and cities will work. So that's actually the reason why we are doing this. And I will share my screen and start my presentation. And I hope I can give you also more insights on the data standard, what it is, how we are using it, and what the benefits for as well the transport operators, as well also the cities are. So, the reason where we started is that we're actually seeing at this moment the Europe is transforming towards a more digital way of we have more digital options in towards cities, and what we see is cities want to have more data. We are getting more data driven, and we're having a development of more digitalization. So you need to act upon that one, and we want to have a strategy on it. And we see in mobility we have a lot of more digital concepts and things that's going on. So you want to see actually how your mobility is going towards the city. So we developed a data standard, and I think a lot of you all worked with MaaS. MaaS is when you go traveling, you go from from your house towards maybe your grandma, and then you have all kinds of options of different mobilities, and you have a complete ecosystem. Well, the MaaS app is usually what you're using if you want to hire a car, of your public transport, or shared mobility, and you have kinds of rules for it. And the city data standard actually is a part of this whole ecosystem between the MaaS providers, between the governmental parties, and between the shared transport operators. And we are working in this ecosystem just on one part, but it's all connecting towards with each other. As we're seeing, the reason why we are working on the Cdsm, we see in this ecosystem we have a lot of standards already in the market in Europe, but actually not all standards will fit for all the use cases. For example, if you want to know where all your vehicles are parked, you cannot use every standard that's on the market. So you maybe have a combination of different standards. So what we try to achieve is to make an agreement, so you can go through the whole process to every step you need to make, answer your policy questions, so you can choose the right standards to exchange the data with your transport operator and with your city. And we also want to do it on a very transparent and privacy and security and ethical way. So you want to really make sure that you don't misabuse the data of your citizens. And I think that is the really difference that we're going to make with this standard and the process that we are working on. So the Cdsm is not only the standard, it's a technical standard, of course, but it's also the agreement. It exists actually of the standard and the agreement. The standard is the API and the endpoints, the technical layers where you're going to exchange the data with the transport operator and the data processor and the city. But the agreement actually is also very, very important, and it's a big part of our vision. That actually means the agreement is all the steps you're making as a government on privacy levels, on security levels, how you do your governance, who is the ownership of the data, what all the ethical questions. And we are trying to make blueprints and standards for every city in the Netherlands. And also we want to scale it up towards Europe, so everyone can use the same steps in the process to exchange the data. The reason that we want to scale it up and make it accessible for everyone, we are seeing at this moment that it's taking a long time to start use cases and start pilots, and not every city has the capacity and the resources to exchange data on a very ethical and privacy way. So we are actually doing all the research at this moment, and we want to share it later on so everyone can use it and follow the right steps. So you are getting the right data, conform all the GDPR demands that we're having in Europe. Well, what we want, as I say, we're going to work towards a single European data standard for mobility. And we are going to do it together with the mobility parties, the transport operators, the data providers, and also cities. And it's an ongoing process that we're actually starting now. And as more policy questions will come, we're going to develop the way data will be exchanging in the next few years. So the CDSM is not only a standard, it's also a vision, it's an approach. And I think it's going to be more and more important for every city and transport operators to make sure we're going to exchange data and interpret the data on the right way for every city. Well, how does it work? We have the standard, it's an API. I don't know if everyone has the technical knowledge of what an API is. I think we have a nice plaatje for it. So we can use the Cdsm API as a plug. As you can see on the screen, we have the mobility provider, we're making an endpoint, we have the API, and we have the municipality. And you're going to exchange the data on a technical level towards actually this, this endpoint and this API. And that is what we are at this moment on a technical level developing. And what kind of data can you, for example, exchange to this API? Well, at this moment in the Netherlands, we're having 4 pilots in Amsterdam, in Utrecht, in Eindhoven, and we're starting a new pilot in Rotterdam. And for example, we want to have the trip locations. We want to know where all the vehicles are parked. We want to know how long vehicles are being parked, how long they're being charged. So we are going to actually get all the data through that API. And that's what we're working on. But before you get the data, we actually do the Gdpr. We have that's the agreement. We are making a security framework. We do all the privacy questions. We make an NDA. We do a due diligence investigation, and then we can start with the pilot. And actually that process already took us, I think, more than 4 or 5 months. And the reason why we're doing it, because it's very important to take care of the privacy. I'm going to skip a little bit of the API because I'm running out of time. And then I go back. So why it's very important to make sure you have your data, the PR done. It's very important to make to make sure that the data of all your citizens are being protected. And according to the GDPR, we see that in Europe we have a lot of miscommunication about which kind of data you can exchange. And some say you can get every trip data real time, but others say you cannot. At this moment, we are saying that actually every data that you collect is personal data, and that therefore you make sure that it's not going to be. You want to make sure that it's going to be. You have the data on a very high aggregation level, so you cannot make sure that you know which citizens are going to which place. And well, that is what we're working on. So I don't know if everyone reads about the GDPR, but you want to make sure you get your ownership right. You want to make you have I don't think I'm going to skip this one. So the reason that we're so high on privacy is because we got a lot of fines in the Netherlands about the data protection that we not give our citizens. So for example, we did Wi-Fi tracking. I also think everyone already knows we have a high case on the tax income department that did not protect all the data for our citizens. And I think that's why we do it in this way. And we see that's very important. And we also want everyone to see this part of the data exchange. And why we want to scale it up in Europe? Well, we also did a big research in Europe about what all cities, what are the demands and what are the possibilities of all the cities. And we see that a lot of cities in Europe are actually at this moment busy with exchanging the data, but not knowing in the right way how to do it. And we see that we are going to build on a legal framework, and we see that all the we see that everyone is searching for which kind of standards we want to use, and that is what the research is doing for. How are we going to do it? We have a lot of different use cases in the Netherlands, and we're trying now to build on a very small use cases, and then we're going to test it on different smart mobility cases. And therefore we build use cases, and we want to build a use case library, and therefore we can learn and exchange. And we use the same templates in every city, and we want to also explore, scale it up towards Europe. If everyone on a technical level wants to know how it works, we have a data flow, how the Cdsm is going to work. And this is how it looks like. But how do we work together with cities and together with working with transport operators? Therefore, we are actually having a working group. And in the working group, we try to have a mix of all kinds of expertises. And in every working group, we have different expertises. On a legal team, we have a technical team, we have a governance team, we have a security team, and we work also with all different kinds of mobility organizations in Europe. And every expertise is actually helping us to develop how we need to approach exchanging data and developing standards into Europe. And that's all with the goal to make sure that we have a uniform way of exchanging data in every city and protecting all the data of the citizens. Well, the objective, of course, of the working group is to make sure that we are developing a good standard, we are developing the agreement, all the processes around, we're making all the blueprints, we create an alignment together, we want to scale it up towards Europe, and we are writing all together on the technical demands of the standards. And the very important thing, I also wanted that we have a lot of standards. We don't want to create a new standard. We don't want to reinvent it, but we want to have to make sure everyone has the same vision. And we want to co-work with everyone in Europe and in the Netherlands, together with municipalities and together with transport operators on data exchange so everyone can choose the right standards for their policy goals. This is the process, the working process flow of the working group, how it works, how we actually come to a use case, and also how we come to the development of the standards. Well, I'm going to skip this one. This is a lot about the working group. At this moment, we're having 3 pilots, and the 4th one is in Rotterdam, and we have all kinds of different shared mobilities in the pilots. And therefore, we learn on how you can exchange the data on a policy level, on the enforcement level, and also on planning. So the city wants to know where all the mobility is riding through the city, where all the mopeds are being parked, if citizens are not satisfied on how people are parking. So you want to exchange that data. And now we are in a very little pilots try to work that out. And we hope to get the results of the Cdsm and the pilots, I think around March, later on this year. And then we can share everything what we have. And then we want to make the blueprints, want everyone aligned and scale it up, and hope that the next few years we're going to develop more a more safe way of exchanging data for cities. All kinds of information can be found on the GitHub and the Swagger Hub for the technical persons in this meeting. And I think the questions will be can be asked after Challa will say something about the TOMP-API. So yes. Challa, I can give you the word.
That's very correct, Gemma. Thank you very much for your presentation. Challa, it's your turn.
Thank you, Gemma, for the presentation. Super interesting, as always, to see what's going on here. Let me just share my screen. Should be okay. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at the webinar for data integration for Ehubs. I would like to take you along for the ride what in the world of the TOMP API, but it's going to be a low level integration. So it's the first steps. We're not going to dive too deep because we might organize some webinars later to dive a little bit deeper, but this is for the first level to get you introduced to it. What I would like to talk about today is a little bit about the organization I'm working for, Mpact. Jasmin did a bit, so I'm going to make it a little shorter. Then about the Ehubs project, also short. And then about the reason for standardization and data in the field of mobility. And then the last part is on the TOMP API. First off, Mpact, the organization formerly known as TaxiStop, with the goal do more with less, and we've been doing that since 1975. This slide was already shown and explained very well by Jasmin. Thank you for that. But I have one thing to add here on the right. You will see the Shared Mobility Rocks icon photo. This is going to happen again, the 25th of May next year in Bremen. It's the first Shared Mobility Rocks outside of Belgium. So we're super looking forward to that. And we hope some of the people that are in this webinar will also join us for that. You can find information online. I will just admit a new person. Yeah, this was very well explained by Jasmin, so I'm going to skip it. What I want to point out is we have a few services we do at Mpact. Some of the things I want to shine a light on, let's say it like that. First off is Cozy Wheels. Cozy Wheels is a peer-to-peer car sharing service within Belgium. So you can use your own car and you can share your own car with your neighbors or with people you know, and we will help you with setting up everything that comes with that. So it makes sharing your car with your neighbors a lot easier. And as you can see, even your cargo bike can be shared if you have one, or your normal bike. So that is a service we provide. We have MobiTwin, which is formerly it was known as Less Mobile Services, and this is a service where volunteers drive elderly people who can't walk that well or can't move, aren't that mobile. They will drive them to the doctor's appointment, to the hairdresser, and things like that to make sure they get out there and yeah, get around and have things to do in a daily basis. And this is in cooperation with communities throughout Belgium. And the last thing I want to point out is the carpooling service we provide. We've been doing that for years and years. Carpool.be is the go-to place if you want to carpool in Belgium for yourself or for your business. The Ehubs project. So the Ehubs project started a few years ago. The main project is almost ending. It's going to be ending in June, but we got an extension for the project, and that's why we have some new partners within the project, and that is why we are doing this webinar as well. These new partners are found in Ireland and in the area around Inverness in Scotland, next to the original partners in the Netherlands, Belgium, with the city of Leuven, city of Amsterdam is in there, region Manchester, and Dreux in France, and some Bayern Innovative in Germany, and the city of Kempten as well. So they are presented within the Ehubs project, and we do pilots on Ehubs. And what is an Ehub? An Ehub is a point in public space where multiple modes of electric shared mobility come together. So from that one point, you can travel within different modes. And the goal, of course, is to reduce CO2 reduction by getting people out of their private car. And yeah, at that point, we want to offer possibilities to get from A to B to users without using the obvious one, as said, a private car. And to do that, we need to inform users. That's where this whole data, this quest for a data standard comes in, and why we have joined the TOMP working group a few years ago. To facilitate this. So we have tools that we need. We need a website to inform users. We have the kiosk, which is it's an interface where users can look up their possibilities, and we have a dashboard where municipalities can control what is on the screens on the kiosks, so they can manage all their Ehubs throughout the country. The kiosk looks a little bit like this. Note that at the bottom of each field, the menu is structured in a way that all the buttons are at the bottom. This is to facilitate people in wheelchair who are less, who can't stand up, can still use it. So it's part of the setup of an Ehub kiosk screen, is that everybody should be able to use it. That is really important, and this is step one, but we'll take it further when it comes. And on this hub, you can have real-time information on trains coming in, if they're there, or on buses, if it's near a bus stop, but also the possibility to book a shared bike, or to get information on a shared bike or shared cars that are in the neighborhood, or even if there is a way to safely put your bike away, or to pump your tires when it's necessary, and things like that. So all this information is shown on that. And to facilitate this, as I said, we need data. We need something to put on air, because otherwise you can't show all this to the people. That's why I would like to step back a little bit and talk about the importance of data. But first off, because we wanted to do like a stepping stone kind of webinar today, so I want to explain a couple of things. If you already know it, very good. For the people that don't know, it might help understand the rest of the story a little bit better. So first off, a mobility mode. Yeah, it speaks for itself, but I wanted to highlight it. So a mobility mode is a means of transport. It's the way to get from A to B. That can be something traditional, like public transport. Bus, train is a way to get from A to B. It can also be some sort of shared mobility, a shared car, a shared bike, or even micro-mobility services like an e-scooter or an e-step that you see. So in general, when I talk about mobility modes, it's the whole combination of everything. And then the subject of MaaS, mobility as a service. I think most people will know it, but let's say, let's start from the point that you don't know. It started out as a subscription service. So the first idea was you have a sort of Netflix for mobility. You pay a fee, a monthly fee, and you can use any mobility mode that is available in the application as a service. It has evolved a bit in different cities, combining services that you can book through one app, but it's still a pay-as-you-go service. So every mobility mode you use, you pay. And that's what it has evolved to mostly. I'm wondering if it's going to get to the actual mobility as a service at a certain point, but at this point, it's mostly, and again, I say mostly, used as a pay-as-you-go thing. But you have one application where you can book multiple services in the city, which is super handy, of course. API, Gemma already explained it a little bit. It's an application programming interface. So it's essentially a way, a defined way of how two computer systems can communicate with each other and exchange information and data. Lastly, a transport operator or a mobility provider is the organization running the mobility modes. So just to make that clear, that is who everybody is. Why would you use data? Well, it will help you with making well-founded decisions. It will help you analyze trends over certain periods of time, can be long, can be short. It will help you make improvements on what you're doing because you can follow up what is going on. If you know what happened or why certain things are occurring, you can change them. And for cities, it's important to know that even if your cities or villages or municipalities, how small you might be or how big, you might not know what to do with it now, but it is important to set up a system to start working with it so you can use it in the future. And that goes for the TOMP-API, but it most certainly goes for Cdsm as well. But why, when there is data, why should you standardize? I like to make the comparison to doing like a 1,000-piece puzzle, like many of you have been doing during the lockdown, upside down. You can make it work. It's possible, but it's very difficult and it's not really pleasant. That's why I'd like to And if you force it, you will break it. Every piece has its own specifications. Yeah, it's just a hassle. It's possible, but I wouldn't recommend it. That's why I'd rather have something like this, where you can connect everything to the main island. It doesn't matter what you are. Even in this picture, I like that there is like a Duplo for the people who know Lego, like a smaller version for smaller children version of Lego is on there, and that still is connecting to the main Lego toys. So it doesn't really matter what you do, where you are able to connect because you've standardized the way you fit together. Within MaaS, these 4 levels of MaaS were first published by Socher et al. In a paper they wrote, and it describes what MaaS is or what MaaS could or should go to. So if you look at, it's called the 4 levels, but it's actually 5. But level 0 is a system where you have no integration. That's what a lot of you will have seen. National access point will have heard information that you have to, as a mobility provider, you need to put data in a national access point. This is what this is. You have single separate services. So information on what you're doing is available, but you can't use it and you can't really combine it from a design standpoint. Then the first level of MaaS, this is where you actually start with MaaS, is the integration of information. This allows, because you can connect different things, you can start doing multimodal route planning, and you can actually start doing something with it. And this is the level where most services operate, and most APIs that are already available operate in as well. And this is also the level we use at the Ehub level. But when you go 1 level higher, you get to the integration of booking and payment. This is where the TOMP-API comes in. So the TOMP-API, as far as we know it, is the only API description for MaaS integration that covers the whole spectrum, where you can actually book a ride, you can pay for a ride, you can search, you can do everything. And that's why we are promoting it, because it's a super handy thing. And the 2 next levels have to do with the public goals. So instead of booking single rides, you have the possibility to use a contract or a subscription for a certain service over time. And the integration of societal goals are about policy incentives. If somebody, some area you want to offer more mobility modes in, you can go there and make sure it happens more. So this is the policy level where you influence what is happening. Now within MaaS, why do we want to do this? We want to be able to get mobility modes integrated faster. We need to facilitate the regulation for different mobility modes and transport operators, create fair and equal opportunities for all players. Because the smaller you are, the more difficult it is going to be to set up your own system to exchange information. So if you have a standard you can adhere to, you don't have to do all that research, and makes everything a lot easier. And it will offer Cdsm municipalities insight of the use of mobility on their territory. Now, the TOMP-API, the main event. The TOMP-API is a technical specification of how to exchange data between transport operators on the one side and MaaS providers on the other side. So that's why it's TOMP. Very obvious, but it's good to know. Otherwise, what is this? It's important to note that the TOMP-API isn't an application you install. The TOMP-API is a set of rules on how to exchange this data. So in practice, a transport operator will need to provide the data conforming to the TOMP protocol, and MaaS provider need to be able to interact with it according to this protocol. So both have to set up their software systems as such so they can talk with each other and they can plug into each other. The TOMP-API covers the complete trip for a user for any mobility mode, and that is what we aim for. And the TOMP-API itself is fully open source, as it's free to be used, and also the working group, the group that is creating that, is also open source. So everybody's welcome to join in and have their say, be it in the meetings or on the GitHub page. Short, trying to explain what is happening. When you have a normal situation, you have a person trying to rent a shared snowmobile. They can communicate directly with the operator. I want to book something. You can do it. I need to pay. Here's my credit card. And they will go back and forth. What happens in a MaaS kind of situation is the user asks the MaaS application, hey, I want to go from where I am now, and I want to go up the mountain or down the mountain. But I don't have a subscription for a snowmobile or a bike or a car thing, but I want to use one. This application will search in different options until it finds the snowmobile option, and will ask through the specification of the TOMP API to this provider, user X wants to use a snowmobile today because he wants to go down the hill and do some groceries for his family, and he can't move otherwise. And this provider will say, okay, I have one available, you can book it. It will cost that much, and it is free from that time to that time. It will return this to the app. The user will say, okay, super, I will book it. And then communication goes in and they go back and forth. So all this communication is handled and described within the TOMP API. I'm going to skip this one for time. It's the mission and the vision. It's important to know. We want to develop and sustain an internationally governed, interoperable, open standard for technical communication. It's really important to have this as a vision, but it's not that interesting to talk about right now. The TOMP API itself is set up in different modules, starting from operator information over planning, booking, trip execution. All the names pretty much explain what you're doing. I will go a little bit further in it, maybe in more specified webinars or private talks we might have. But the operator information is essentially, what are you offering? This is based off of the GBFS standard. So it's the TOMP API is very much in contact with other standards to be in line as much as possible. But when you go further from that, all these things, planning, booking. So planning is I want to go from A to B. Booking is I want to actually book this ride. Trip execution is opening, pausing, using an asset, and then payment and support speak for themselves. And it goes between transfer operator and MaaS providers with their own levels of authentication in between. In the Ehubs project, it's interesting, and that makes the TOMP API also a kind of stepping stone thing. It isn't required to develop everything. You can just start with these two things, operator information and planning, to get going. And then we can fully integrate you into an Ehub. If you have done this, like it, you can move on and start implementing booking and trip execution as well. So this is an interesting facet of the TOMP API. Good news, what I can tell. So this is the roadmap. We started in May of 2019. And at this point, we have released version 1.2. And the good news is, beginning 22, version 1.3 is coming out. So we'll have a new version, which has some really nice features like integration with on-demand mobility solution. Therefore, we have been working together with the GOFS initiative by Mobility Data. We've added extra support for ancillary options. This is to improve accessibility. If you're blind, deaf, and want to use something, you can book things through the TOMP API as well. And we are setting up the first steps to support external user verification. So a user doesn't necessarily have to have an account on everything. It can be handled externally. And one of the roads it's going at this point is towards blockchain technology, but I will not dive into that right now. Yeah, the TOMP API itself is mature, ready, and being used in real-life applications in multiple countries. As far as we know, there are over 50 production versions. It might be a bit more because it's open source, we can't know everything. We only know the people who come to us with questions or tell us that they have implemented it. Yeah, and this gives us time to do other things like disseminating this, working on the system of MaaS islands, and getting rid of that, creating an ecosystem of trust, discovery services, and so on. This is part of the combination. Cdsm is between government and shared mobility providers. And the TOMP API is used for communication between MaaS and mobility providers. So it's a different way where all this works. Other standards, I don't have that much time left, so I will skip this. You can read this. There are a lot of standards out there, and it's important to work together with all of them. And that is what we're trying to do, of course. Some links that might be useful to you. just look them up. The TOMP website is a good place to start, and on Cdsm is also information. Last thing before I leave you, I want to say that so Monday there's going to be the same webinar but in French, as Jasmine said before, and the 14th of December it's the final of the student challenge. So in the Art Forum project, which is a different project than Ehubs, there has been a student challenge where 5 projects from universities from all over the world have been selected, and they're going to present their idea for the future of mobility. And there's going to be a prize to win for them in the end. So if you want to join that next Tuesday, go to the Mpact.be website and you can subscribe there. You will find this in the tab events. Thank you for listening, and I will give the word back to Jasmine for the questions.
Thank you very much, Challe, for your presentation. It's very interesting. There are already some questions in the chat, so if there are any more, please put them in the chat. We will try to answer them. And we can start with a question from Anse. I will read the question. Are standards also set for data that are not directly linked to the use, but also for data that governments want to know about for future decisions? For example, heat maps or type of users that can be used to open new hubs. Gemma or Challe, I don't know which one of you two can answer this question.
Probably Gemma.
Yes. At this moment for the Cdsm, we are using only the data for mobility providers, but the vision is that we're in the future going to add more data possibilities towards the standards. So it's a growing model. So we're not using the heat maps, but I know that there's interest in, for example, CO2 reduction, CO2 measurements, to compare that and to add that also to different pilots. At this moment, we're not there yet because we are really going to the first stage of all the pilots, but that is the vision for later on. Yes, we try to do that later on.
Is that a clear answer to your question, Ansel? Yes, okay, very good. A next question about the TOMP-API from Suren. I hope I pronounce your name in the right way. How does the TOMP-API interact with the standards for multi-modal travel information services, NETEX for static mobility data, and SIR for dynamic data? Challe, that might be one for you.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Søren, for this question. It's good to see you here after we met in the Polis conference last week. What it is, as I explained in the modules, the first module, operator information, could be interchangeable with standards like NETEX. NETEX is describing what you're offering and how, and that is exactly what operator information does. So in theory, you could start with having NETEX to describe who you are and what you're offering, or preferably write a mapping for NETEX to the TOMP operator information, and then use the rest of the TOMP API to handle booking and planning and trip execution. That is how I would go about combining these standards for the people who already have invested in NETEX, for example.
The issue here is that in 2 years we all have to invest in it. So it's not something that you can decide if you want to. It's something that you have to.
But it depends on what transport operator you are, of course.
No, if you are in Europe, it is mandatory. It goes for everybody, from micromobility to public transport.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not something that you can. You definitely have to be aware of it in your work, that this will come. I mean, it's just as mandatory as Gdpr.
Okay.
It's EU regulation. I mean, it's law for everyone who resides in the EU.
But in any way, it can be solved by using it like that.
Yeah. But I'm also happy that you mentioned the NETEX and Siri, and that'll do for now. But it's just information to everybody that if you haven't looked into that yet, then in 2 years' time, you will eventually all support open data in NETEX format and delivering them, or delivering where I can get them in your national access point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way forward for us all in Europe to have single standards for all mobility data. And that's why I just want to make sure that you do not invent another level of data. We already have DGFS. I'm assuming that you're using that pretty much, but just make sure that you do not try to invent another layer to communicate between actors on dynamic and static plan data.
But this is exactly what we've been trying to avoid by doing this. We're filling a gap that wasn't there at the moment. We've developed that to be available. It's very useful that Europe is going to push for this. I don't want to get into a discussion about this because I really value your opinion and your knowledge on this. But there is a big difference between EU regulation coming into place and it actually being implemented by everybody. So the time in between needs to be filled as well. I see Gamma wants to add something, so I'll give you the word.
Yeah, I want to add something. The thing with the Cdsm, we know there are a lot of standards already existing, and for the pilots at this moment, we are using also a GBFS 2.0 and MDS, part of the MDS metrics. So that means that we are combining also standards. But the thing that we're doing really is not really reinventing a standard, but actually we are developing the standards towards also the European law on cybersecurity, on privacy. And we see that some of the MDS approaches and aggregations levels are not actually according to the GDPR. And we also saw that, for example, the MDS wrote a new document on privacy, and we see from the perspective that we have that we are not agreeing on all the arguments in their privacy documents. So I think that we still have a lot of discussion going on and to do in Europe on what is the best practice and what is the best way, and to develop standardization and implementing standards for what kind of use for cities. And I think that is a very important thing. And the Cdsm is having that vision on how you can approach this, how you can implement it, what are the what kind of blueprints can you have, what kind of demands do you have, and how then can you protect your citizens. And that's what we're doing. And it's not reinventing, but developing it further than it is already now. I hope I hope that is really the message that we also want to send.
I think the message from Søren is also interesting. I thought NetX was only for public transport operators, and I know there have been some efforts, definitely in the Netherlands, of doing this. But if this is also valid for micromobility, I think within the TOMP working group, somebody should look into what has just been said by Søren, just to make sure that we are not on the wrong track.
Yeah,
this is of course what we're gonna try to we're doing, and we're up on that.
I can send you to the group the specification. There are no difference between a public transport bus and a private shared car or a micromobility device. They're all included on equal terms. It's just different times of implementation.
Okay.
And that's a tricky part. And I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Søren. It's an interesting discussion to maybe take further somewhere else. Maybe we can end up with the last question from Andrea. Since anyone forks the API, doesn't it defeat the purpose of a universal API, since each provider could have a slightly different implementation of it? Charlotte, that might be for
yes,
you.
I will try to answer it in a way. It's what open source is. You develop something and you start from that. You release something into the world that can be interpreted in different ways. You try to close it as much as possible so it gets interpreted in the same way, but there is no way you can control what is going on. The only thing you can do is make it as good as possible, listen to the thoughts and the questions from other people, try to adapt according to it, and make sure everybody is happy with the way it is and work from that. But there is room for this as well in the TOMP-API description, because there is an endpoint called meta, where you describe how you've been implementing. This makes it also possible for different mobility modes to use it, because you can describe what you've been doing, how it's working, and therefore you can still use the power of standardization to work from that. I hope that answers your questions a little bit.
Okay, Andrea, is that clear for you?
Yeah, clear. I still have some questions, but there is not enough time for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, but maybe you can make another appointment to discuss it with Challa.
You can always get in touch with me, and I'm happy to talk about anything with anyone. So you can find me on LinkedIn or send me an email. My address is in the slides. You can see it.
In case I will have further questions, I will definitely use the occasion.
Super.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much, Challa. And Gemma, I guess maybe the same works for you. If someone has another question that hasn't been answered, they can contact you. So thanks all for listening. We have to round up here. It's already some minutes behind 12. Thank you all for joining us, and hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming, listening, and your attention.